Welcome pilots, my name is Hybrid V, and last night I got to play the brand new Evocati test of 324.2, and as always, as a reminder, I'm not allowed to show anything about that. I am allowed to talk about it, I can't show anything regarding that build. So everything you're going to see on the screen here is the crew from Extreme G Racing practicing their smooth landings. So if you want to check them out, there will be a link down below if you want to check out their Discord. Anyway, let's get straight to it. So the main focus of this Evocati build was just stability testing. There was no actual features they were asking us to test. Despite that, there were new features added into the build that we could kind of sink our teeth into a little bit, and I want to talk about that. So first and foremost, like I said, a stability test. So it seems like they were just trying to see how stable the servers are, if they can break things, and then if they can fix them the next day. So it looks like maybe they're doing some other types of similar improvements, maybe to the RMQ system or whatever. Some people were suspecting that we were server meshed. I don't think we were. I'm not 100% certain. If you were in the Evocati test and you know a little bit more about that, by all means, go ahead and leave your comments below so other people can take a look at that. But yeah, so there seemed to be some more focus on stability issues here, and it was pretty unstable. There was a lot of crashing of the servers, and there was a lot of deadlocking of the servers where they would crash, they would get the server error, restart, and then crash, restart again. So it looks like CIG really just wanted us to break it just so they can kind of find the real major pinch points and fix that for the servers. So it seems like they're probably testing some new stuff back there because there wasn't a whole lot of brand new content necessarily. Now, be mindful, this patch was 44 gigs of data that we had to download for the game. So obviously there's new content, but a lot of it wasn't necessarily super forward facing. So what else was new in the build that we could take a look at? Now, again, everything I'm going to talk about here was completely unfinished. I will talk about bugs and stuff and little weird issues here and there, but again, it was entirely unfinished and it was not ready for feedback, but I'm sure you all want to hear about the new stuff like the brand new MFDs that came in. So yeah, we were promised new MFDs and we got them in this build. Again, it's all rudimentary, but it was still functional. It was entirely usable and they were actually really, really good. Now, they are entirely kind of normalized across the board depending on which manufacturer you had. So for example, Drake and RSI and Aegis, they functioned identical to each other and in some cases even look the same, but there are some aesthetic differences here and there. But for the most part, it looked great. And one of the bigger changes that came with a lot of these ships and the new MFDs was an actual rework to the interiors of some of the ships to incorporate these new MFDs. So let's talk about the new MFDs and what actually came in more specifically here. So right now, currently in game, our MFDs are built on like an old flash-based system, and the new one is built on the new building block system that they've been using for the kiosk systems and all that jazz. And this new system is really, really good. I quite enjoy it. Now, the HUD, the upfront HUD that we're used to now, has been completely reverted to kind of being put above like the MFDs, so they're not quite in the front of your center view anymore to give you more, like kind of more visual awareness of what's going on in front of you. And that's going to be a really weird trip to get used to because we're so used to our information about our flight being put directly in front of us on our canopy, essentially, right? Now all that has been put directly above the MFDs. So when you're trying to figure out how fast you're going or where your boost is, you kind of have to take your eyes off of the center screen a little bit and kind of look off to the side towards your MFD. So I know some people are probably going to not like this. For me personally, it's definitely a lot of relearning because I'm used to having my information up front. It's kind of a reason why in real life, pilots actually have their HUD elements so small, like in a small square in front of the pilot. So that way all the information is centered in an area centralized. So that way the pilot, especially if the pilot's pulling a lot of G's, can easily see what's going on with their plane at any given time. So if you're used to playing like a simulator like myself, it's really weird seeing all the displays and all the really, really important information being thrown off to the sides there. Now, again, this is the earliest implementation of it. This may not even be finalized, I don't know, but as it stands right now, it was functional and usable. And currently, like I said, it takes a little bit of learning to get used to it because everything is so, thrown off the main screen, so to speak. So we had a couple of different pages here. We had like the normal self-status page, which is basically just your ship, your shields. It also shows your current ammo count in terms of your capacitor for your laser weapons and your ammo for ballistics. Very simple stuff we're used to. But then there's a shield page that shows the same information. It just removes a lot of the other data, such as like ammo. It just shows the shields. and the current status of those shields. You had target status, which is pretty simple. It's just that showing the target. It's very simple, similar to like the one that we're used to now. It's just, it looks prettier and it has a very nice, more detailed model that it shows on there when you're actually shooting at them. There's a little bit more detail showing on there, right? And then we have now the IFC page, which CIG has hinted at, of course, on previous Inside Star Citizens and whatnot. And that allows us to edit, settings that we're used to in the game settings currently in game. So turning off some functionality, like for example, the precision mode when your gear is down, all that stuff can be adjusted on that page. We also had a new communications panel, which is basically just a rework of the old communications panel for hailing stations and other players. It's very simple, straightforward. It's just a much more prettier version of what we're used to. We also had the kind of weapons preset grouping page. So CIG talked about how we can now customize our weapon groupings now. And it's interesting because the keybind by default to switch your weapon groupings is now mouse wheel. That's a little bit confusing at first, I'm sure, especially for you mouse and keyboard users, but yeah. So like, let's say you want to fire all weapons. By default, your left mouse button will be to fire all your weapons. But let's say your ship has lasers and ballistics already by default. You can then mouse wheel up or down to switch between individual presets, and they'll cycle between your lasers and your ballistics. By default, that's how every ship is designed. You can cycle between having all your weapons fire all together at once, or have your ballistics fire independently, or have your lasers fire independently. I think this is a really cool change and I quite enjoyed it. I remapped it on my joysticks and it worked flawlessly. It was really, really good. And on that note, speaking of remapping things on joysticks, there's a lot more stuff to remap with these new MFDs, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it was very simple, very easy to remap things and get them going in the game, so I'm very excited for that. And yeah, the weapon grouping system is really good. I really liked it. It was really cool too, switching the weapon groupings and seeing your HUD elements about your self status. And on some ships, it was even up on the center front of the actual ship, like on the canopy itself. It will tell you what grouping you're currently using, and it will name the actual weapon systems you're using. So for example, if you had Panthers, right, your size 3 laser repeaters, and then you say had your Mantis or whatever, you can cycle it and it will say Mantis, Panthers, right? And it was really cool seeing that change in real time, and it's just really fun seeing the ship react to different things you're doing. The only thing that was missing, of course, is there's no sound effects. So they're kind of coming towards the end of production of this, I would assume. It seems like that since they're getting it into our hands soon. So I'm hoping that audio is going to get a crack at this very soon, because of course, as things come towards the end of production, that's when audio comes in and starts to put their flavor on things. And I really want to hear these new elements. And on that note, I really want to know if audio is going to be doing any new interior ship computer audio, because the computer audio that we have for all our manufacturers have been around forever, like almost a decade now. They've been, and I'm 100% certain that the vast majority of the elements they've already recorded for that don't fit the current way the game is going now. So my suspicion is they may have to actually re-record a new ship computer voices. But that's just a suspicion. I'm sure they're going to probably try to ride it as long as they can, because of course it does cost money to hire actors, to even just to do voice lines and stuff like that, especially if you're trying to get complicated. And CIG needs to nail down what the ship needs to cover first before they ever do that. So probably by the time we get to 1.0, maybe we'll have like new voices and stuff like that. But currently right now, it's weird that the ship doesn't talk anymore. Is what I'm trying to really get at here. And it feels like the reason why is because there's so many new elements here and they just never plugged them into the old voice lines. So at some point, we're probably going to need some re-records here. And I would really love to see how CIG approaches that. Moving on, I want to talk about the power page. So the power priority triangle that we're used to now is gone. So CIG have talked about this more specifically. I believe it was Yogi that talked about this, that they didn't really want to do micromanaging with power necessarily anymore. Now, there's still some element of micromanaging you can do. It's just that the power priority triangle is now gone. It's no longer you put power to engines, power to weapons, power to shields, and then little things happen in the background. Now, you still can do that. You have to now do it in this power page, however. And this power page is set up like a little bar system. It's very similar to other space games you may have played, like for example, like Elite Dangerous and whatnot, where you have the little power bars that you can adjust. And you can adjust them there, of course. Now, initially, I didn't actually go looking for the default keybind. I just kind of was playing with the MFD by holding F and clicking it. And this is where me and a lot of other Evocati kind of noticed some issues with this version of MFDs right now. Holding F and clicking kind of interfered with clicking other buttons in the cockpit. Sometimes you would end up accidentally clicking power off on your ship or something like that. So they got to work on that. Of course, like I said, it's still in development. It is not, they're not asking for feedback yet on any of this stuff. So, you know, of course, by the time we get it, it's going to be completely different. By the time, you know, when I mean we, I mean all of you all out there. By the time we get it in our hands, either in Open PTU or in live, it's going to be completely different from how we experienced it. So again, grain of salt, folks. So yeah, you have to, so for example, let's say, I believe it was like the arrow starts with all its power fully maxed on weapons, engines, and shields. Perfectly fine. Everything's maxed out. Not really can do much there. However, the ship, like for example, the Gladius actually starts with the minimum amount of power given to the weapon systems, and then everything else was maxed out. So let's say I wanted a higher capacity for my Panthers on my Gladius, I would actually have to reduce the power output from my shields and put it into my weapon systems. And you have a limited amount of points you can actually allocate between those systems. So if I wanted to actually have a higher boost pool, I would have to limit something. I would have to take points away from my weapons or points away from my shields and put them into my engines, and then I would have a much higher boost capacity. So it's similar to what we're used to now. It's just that now well, at least right now when I played it, you have to kind of fiddle with the MFD. Now, I am 100% certain that there is actually keybinds to kind of adjust that. I just didn't go look for it in this initial test because we only had 3 hours to play with this. It was, again, just designed for stability testing. So if some of you are like, oh my god, I don't want to have to fiddle with an MFD, don't worry. I guarantee you there's keybinds probably to really quickly kind of adjust these things on the fly. And again, they don't seem to be as effective as they were with the power priority triangle. Again, it mainly just affects how much you have to work with more than anything else, right? It doesn't seem to, at least when I currently tested it, and I didn't really have much time to test combat because Arena Commander was really buggy and the servers were buggy, so it didn't feel like putting power to weapons did anything more than just give you capacitors. It didn't seem like it changed charge times or anything like that. Same with shields and same with engines. It felt like it just gave you more of that thing. So we'll see how that plays out. And of course, as we get more builds and they're a little bit more stable and they ask for feedback and stuff like that, I will of course keep you all updated on how that changes and what actually is being affected on that. But overall right now, currently that is how power priority is now handled. It is just a rudimentary system of the engineering system built into the game that's coming out soon now for 4.0. So yeah, that's going to be for pilots now. And speaking of engineering, the engineering consoles are on a lot of ships now. For example, like the Constellation, they just say coming soon right now because they're not going to be available in this build. They're definitely going to be coming in like probably about 4.0 or whatever. So yeah, so that covers all the MFD stuff. I did try out a bunch of different ships. I tried out the Constellation and I tried it in Atmosphere. So it did get its upgunned turret. So now the Andromeda now has the size 3 turrets on there, the size 3 weapons on its turrets. Very nice. The new MFDs look amazing on the Constellation. Still the old Constellation to get a rework, but the actual MFDs themselves look really, really beautiful. Really great. So if you're a Constellation owner and you love the Constellation series, you're going to love the way it looks on the interior. And it's really cool looking at other MFDs around you, and you can see them all when they're on, and it's just really interesting, especially if you're not even in a seat. If you all remember how it is now, if anybody's in a seat, you don't see their MFDs on. Only they can see the MFDs on for them, but that's changing in this build. MFDs are now going to be visible to everybody at any given time, so you can see what that pilot's doing at that moment. It's really, really cool. Really, really happy to see that. What I'm going to be curious about trying with the Constellation is to see if the co-pilot has any ability to do anything. Now, like I said, we're not getting engineering in this build, but I'm curious if those new MFDs are going to give us the ability to mess with the power systems and whatnot or whatever, or even change weapon groupings or anything like that. Are we going to have that ability, or is CIG going to wait until engineering before we can do that? We'll have to wait and see. Of course, like I said, I'll keep you all updated as these builds come out. But that's what I saw so far. Also, they fixed the snub. So undocking from the snub, especially if you solo undock, works now. I know it kind of has worked in the past, and other times it just doesn't work at all, period. Sometimes the ship just will not refuse to release, but it does work now. And the Merlins and Archimedes' new MFDs look really, really good. No more of this goofy overlapping MFD stuff. It looks really beautiful. All the information is so centralized. It looks awesome. I'm super excited for it. And I think that's the biggest thing in this update so far right now, is I'm really, really enjoying the new MFDs. They really breathe new life into the ships because there's a lot more data in front of you now. And one of the interesting things that also breathes new life into it is we have the MFD casts now that you can put on your helmet, which is a thing that would be in the game, and then CIG would take it out and they would put it back in again. And now we finally have the finalized version of what those kind of casts look like. And it's identical. It's the same self-status page that we have in the MFDs and the targeting data on the MFDs. and they just cast onto your helmet on the top right and left of your screen. And if you don't like that, you have the ability to turn those casts off and leave them on the MFDs. Although if you do use the casts, it does give you more ability to use different other MFDs, right? So if you have the target and self in your self status on there, then you can switch one of your pages down to power and your other page down there to, say, shields or something like that, right? So this is a really, really cool change. I quite enjoyed, and it's also going to be really helpful for you Hornet owners out there who only have the 2 MFDs to work with. Now you technically have 4 MFDs to work with if you use the cast system to cast your self status and your target status on the left and top right of your screens, right? Yeah, so initially also, it's hard to quantify because I haven't really done an A or B on my own testing it, but it feels like ships also got another retune balance, at least in Atmosphere, for sure Atmosphere. It feels like ships got slowed down a little bit more in Atmosphere, but their accelerations were improved, if that makes any sense. So I tried out the Gladius and stuff like that. The Gladius feels like it's way more zippier in its acceleration. Its top speed remains roughly the same, but a lot of ships really felt like they had way better acceleration in Atmosphere. Now again, this is all basically just my butt dyno telling me this is what I was feeling. It could be completely unchanged from 3.21 or 3.24.1, excuse me. But yeah, that's what my brain was telling me. It could be completely unchanged. I don't know. It's hard to do an A and B because I didn't actually go back and forth between the builds because I was just really curious to see what we were getting, and I really wanted to sink my teeth into it. So I didn't really get a chance to fully A and B it. Again, like I said, I'll keep you all updated. When we get a new build, I will definitely try to A and B it, but it feels like ships have a lot better acceleration overall. I tried, like, for example, the Gladius around SPK, and it really felt like it could change its direction super fast compared to, like, the Arrow, for example. The Arrow felt way more sluggish as a result, which felt a little weird. But again, they weren't asking for feedback on anything just yet. It could just be their testing or some preliminary numbers. Maybe the Gladius got tuned, but the Arrow didn't. Again, don't take this as gospel, guys. This is all, they didn't ask for feedback, which means things were not done. I'm just letting you know what initially we ran into when we played it. Moving on, I tried out the Redeemer. As many of you may know, the Redeemer had its weapons adjusted. It actually reduced the size of its main turrets from size 5s to size 4s. That is in this build as well too. But the Redeemer does feel like it is a little bit zippier in its acceleration. Doesn't feel as much of a boat. It still feels very heavy, but it's not quite a super heavy boat as it felt like before. It feels more on par with maybe like a Warden, but a lot heavier, if that makes sense. So yeah, they definitely retuned a lot of stuff there for certain. And that does bring me to turrets in general. They did make a change to turrets. So if you don't already know, turrets right now currently have 3 modes: fixed, manual aiming, and auto aim. The manual mode currently right now has the fastest fire rate. If you switch to manual mode, which allows, for example, you to use your mouse to aim, you lose about, it's like, I don't know, about 25% or something like that. I don't know the exact numbers, but you lose some percent of your actual fire rate. So you actually you shoot rounds a little bit slower. And then if you use the auto aim system, you shoot even slower, but the ship weapon automatically aims at the pip for you. That has been changed now. Fixed is still the fastest, but if you use manual aim, it has the same fire rate as a fixed turret. So you can manually aim, but still have the same fire rate. Auto aim is still there, and its fire rate has been reduced, but not as drastically. It's about, kind of almost feels like the same as the manual aim in live right now currently. So you still have the 3 modes. It just seems like CIG has retuned those a little bit. So fixed and manual aiming both have the same fire rate, which I quite enjoy because I actually prefer the manual aim a lot more over the fixed, simply because it's a lot easier to use. And I also feel a little bit more involved with the shooting process. I like having to use my mouse. And I've actually used it with my joystick in live too, and it's actually pretty fun to use. I prefer that over the fixed aim system, and it's kind of nice that they actually made the fire rates the same because, as many of you probably have heard both in my critiques and everywhere else on maybe Spectrum or whatnot, that the multi-cruise ships are not the greatest right now currently, and one of the bigger issues is they just can't really deal with fighters as effectively. And this system right here is a lot better because it means you can do a lot saturation fire and have a little bit more pinpoint accuracy. So we'll see if CIG decides to stick with that or not. I am very eager to actually put this stuff through the ringer, so we'll see how that goes. So what else? Let me take a look at my notes here. Yeah, so we have the new Arena Commander front end. So they beautified the Arena Commander menu. It was really buggy for us, but overall it's a lot more intelligible in its design. I hope they've also addressed a lot of the bugs when it comes to inviting friends and joining matches and stuff, because right now currently they have the Arena Commander up front menu that they kind of redid, and it's great, but it's still buggy. The backend systems and services are still very buggy, and inviting friends is buggy. Launching matches in private mode is still really buggy, so I'm hoping that they have addressed that. But it's kind of hard to test it in this 3-hour test, as well as Arena Commander had a lot of crashes with it. But overall, still, I really like this kind of new design. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot easier to understand what's going on there. On top of Arena Commander changes, one of the bigger things I noticed is that Free Fly now has Good Doctor as a map. I don't know if that's going to ship, but that was really cool to see. Although the central area of Good Doctor, the actual compound, had really bad pop-in issues, so hopefully they can address that before it goes to a wider PTU. We'll see. But I thought that was really cool because it's really nice flying around that map. I forgot the name of the actual planet or moon that takes on. It's in a different star system, but it was really cool flying around Good Doctor and actually seeing the whole thing. We've had some changes like that in the past. For example, like Tank Royales and stuff like that had Good Doctor as a map. Now we have it as a Free Fly, and we'll see if CIG decides to ship it with that. Another interesting change that we saw was some quality of life improvements. One that I noticed was when you open your Mobiglass and you hit escape right now currently in game, it just hits the menu and you can go to main menu or quit from that. But now they have changed it so when you have your Mobiglass open, you hit escape, it closes the Mobiglass, which is a really, really nice change. I mean, that just seems like a no-brainer. They should have just had that from the beginning because it feels like any game would have designed it like that. So I'm glad that they have changed that and made that a thing. Other interesting thing that I noted, of course, if you go to your star map, and you zoom out now, instead of just showing Stanton when you fully zoom out, you can actually zoom out beyond Stanton. Now, of course, it's unfinished. You can't see anything else. Once you're fully zoomed out, you can't even zoom back in, so you have to kind of close the star map and open it again. But it was really cool seeing the idea that you can zoom out of Stanton and zoom beyond Stanton, and it actually showed on the left side UEE space. So eventually we're getting a much wider star map that's going to show more stuff on there. And I think that's going to be really cool. It's going to really flesh out the game a little bit more, and I think when Pyro comes in, of course, you're going to be able to see Stanton and Pyro. I do hope they do plug in the other star systems as well too into the star map, despite the fact that we're not going to be able to immediately visit them, just because I really want to see the other star systems in game and kind of explore it, because they have said in the past that they want the star map to reflect similarly to the star map that we have currently on the website, where you can view all the different star systems that are expected to be in the game, as well as maybe other star systems, maybe not. I don't know if we're going to see them, like Vandal systems and stuff like that. And it'd be really cool to kind of visit that in the star map. But for now, currently right now, if you just zoom out, all you get is just the actual Stanton system, and then that's it. It just bugs out and you have to close it. So we'll see what we get when we get that in our hands when this patch goes live. Maybe they'll rip it out and not throw it in there. I don't know. We'll see. But it's really, really cool to see regardless. A couple of other things, the P8ARC, the civilian variant of the P8AR, was also available in-game, although it was only available to people who actually copied their accounts. I didn't copy my account over, so I didn't get a chance to check it, so I didn't get to see it, but some other Evocati players did get to mess around with it, and apparently it was very cool, though it is the civilian variant, so it is single fire only, basically a California-compliant P8AR. So oh, that was pretty cool. Other things I did notice, though, in terms of weapons, the Arclight pistol has a little bit more data on its little small display on the back of the pistol. It has actually a heat meter that actually builds up when you fire it now. Currently in game, it doesn't do anything. Like if you're ADS with it, if you're aiming down the sight and you overheat the weapon, it just takes you out of ADS. So it's meant to do something, of course. It's supposed to heat up and then your character's probably supposed to let it cool down. But currently in game right now, it doesn't do anything other than just stop you from aiming down your sight. So it looks like they're plugging in some new stuff for energy weapons in soon, because we're supposed to get heat buildup, charge and drain, and of course we're supposed to get malfunctions and all kinds of other stuff. So it looks like they're plugging some of that stuff into the actual weapon systems themselves, at least just the bones of it. We don't have the actual mechanics built in quite yet fully for it. But the display on the Arclight was pretty cool because it shows your current fire mode, whether you have the burst mode or you have the single fire mode. It shows your ammo like we're used to, and then of course it shows heat buildup. So it's very interesting, very cool little things here and there you can see. And of course, being the audio guy, I have to point out that they rebalanced a lot of audio in the game. More specifically, they kind of actually lowered the dynamic range of everything. So what that means is that everything is a lot louder than what we're used to now. So everything has been bumped up in volume, which I quite enjoy. I like high dynamic range games just as much as anybody, but I prefer to have the world immerse me, and really I like taking in all the detailed audio and having the dynamic range slightly reduced to ensure that we get a lot more of that detail coming in. The sounds of all the little stuff around us is a lot better. Now, if you're used to already cranking your volume in Star Citizen, when you first load it up and then you get into the actual game, you're going to blow your eardrums out because that's how loud things are now. Think of it as like the change from the old Gladius's audio to the new Gladius, right? The new Gladius is way louder in comparison to how, say, older ships or even the old Gladius is. And that's an example of like the mix that they're going for now with this new change. Now, a lot of ships still haven't been updated in their audio, so a lot of ships are still very quiet. For example, the F8C Lightning is still just dead quiet. It just doesn't even sound like it's actually flying. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you're hearing more atmospheric sounds than you're hearing any thrusters or anything like that. So there's a lot of old ships that still have that problem. So they still haven't quite gotten around to improving audio or going back to the mix on some of the older ships. But overall, the entire soundscape was kind of rebalanced to kind of put things a little bit more up front. Although that does mean the music got drowned out, at least in this build. So let's see if they correct that, if CIG Audio is going to actually go back and kind of correct some of these issues. But initially, it seems like their dynamic range was kind of brought down. So we'll see how things go there. And of course, we got new music. And one of the newest changes is the actual main menu music itself has been changed to the one that we were used to in the actual Star Engine demo. So that song that was there where you have that girl, she's like singing the actual Star Citizen theme song. That song has actually been moved into the main menu now, and that's going to be what plays there. Very nice song, very lovely song. I actually quite enjoy that, so it's quite interesting of a change. I like it very much so. So yeah, thumbs up on the audio stuff. For me personally, I just would love to see CIG start working more on the ship stuff, but working on the ships, redoing the ship audio, that's a very involved process. There's a lot of production that has to go into that. Because my guess is that they're not going to actually reuse a ton of the old ship audio. They're probably more realistically going to go in and re-record a lot of stuff to get it to fit more with the manufacturers and stuff like that. So that's going to take a little bit longer for them to get to. So if you are, for example, a F8C enjoyer, or if you enjoy the old Buccaneer or whatnot, they're still the old sounds. So they're still going to be a little bit quiet and not as punchy as the newer updated ships comes in. So keep that in mind, but soon TM, I am sure. And I'm probably missing a bunch of other stuff too, but I mean, this is all I could get out of 3 hours. Again, we're probably going to get a new build later today, and we're probably going to have more time to test it throughout this week and weekend. So I'll keep you all updated on that, folks. So if you did enjoy my little recap of what we saw in the Evocati build, please leave a like, as it really does help out the channel. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this and much more down the line, be sure to subscribe as well. And if you want to go a little bit above and beyond, consider becoming a channel member like these fine folks right here who help keep the content going here. But until next time, folks, fly safe, and I'll see you all in the black.
Oh, Stress, he doesn't have the ability to stop that momentum. You might want to fail on that.
Just like, I'm taking it.
That's
when the monster truck is like coming down on top of the Tesla. That was a little bit rough.
Yes.